they have a good team. That's not a surprise to anyone, I don't think. They have a good team, and for 20 minutes of the game, we were doing everything we needed to do to have the game there. That's with 8 turnovers in the first half, but in the second half, they got it going. A lot of it was in transition. There's a component of this game that involves performance at the end of the day. There's doing all the right things. There's being a good teammate, execution of what you want to execute, and then there's a performance factor. And they had some guys, a bunch of guys. I mean, I think they were 50% on 28 threes. So, I think there was a path where we had some self-inflicted wounds that if you don't go down that path, maybe it's still not enough the way that they shot. But I'd like to go down that path and see what it really looked like. And due to a couple things that we didn't do, we weren't able to get to that point.
Questions? Alex?
In the first half, obviously, you mentioned had some success offensively and things started to turn there towards the end of the half. What did you see? How did you kind of evaluate what happened there?
Yeah, I mean, I think I was told at the end of the game we still ended up 1 point per possession. So that's how turnovers really kill you. If you're going to score 1 point per possession and you do anything decent defensively, normally you're in the ballpark of winning. Now their numbers second half were gaudy, but yeah, we were getting the ball inside. We were making strong moves. We finished some of them. We got to the free throw line. I think we were maybe 6 for 7, 7 for 8, something like that in the first half from the free throw line. So that was good to us. That was something that we wanted to attack. Was inside, and that sounds funny because they got all those monsters on the inside, but that's also a strength of ours. So we wanted to be true to who we were that way. And then it also generated some shots from the perimeter, smaller volume, but high percentage. And then we got away from that a little bit in the second half. A little bit of their pressure bothered us, I think, and had us playing offense further away and not being aggressive and playing into late clock in a non-advantageous situation. Like playing into the late clock, if you run offense, you're going to end up in some late clock situations. But you got something going normally. We ended up in some late clock situations that really wasn't really happening. Yeah, and then once they went on a run or two, then it was hard for guys to see what the promised land might look like and continue to play the way that they needed to.
Questions? Other questions?
Just what's the challenge of just keeping your team motivated when it seems like they're right there competing with some of the best in the league, and it just keeps getting away from them? It seems like
this is going to be when we're going to look back one day, and it's going to be crazy when we look back at what this team has gone through. I mean, the whole league is going through it, but not by my estimation. Our particular specific schedule is significantly harder than some others, even amongst all the hardest ones. So I think there's something out there that, we're going to look back in a couple of years and say this was crazy. But so the challenge is saying, hey guys, reminding guys that Tennessee, who's pretty good, came in here and lost by 30 or whatever it was, and identifying the things that we've done well that allow us to compete, and then also identifying the very real things that allow us not to bring the ship home. That's not this game, by the way. That's not this game. When a team does that, it's just that's what it's going. And it's their day. But in these other games, and we've had 6 other games where if I could go back and I make a lot of golf analogies. If I played 18 holes and on every single hole I could eliminate 1 shot and do it over, I'd probably have a pretty good score. And in 6 games, 1 play, if I could go back and change 1 play, we have a completely different record. And that's not normal to say that against elite teams. At home, the worst team we played is the number 19 team in the country at home in the conference.
Front left.
You know, the first game you faced them, I think Houck and Aberdeen were both coming off the bench, and now they're starting because they're a little banged up. But just their ability to kind of, you know, have multiple guys that can kind of go out. How hard is that to kind of scout and defend when they have different guys that can step up on different nights?
I mean, certainly I think that's an advantage for them from a depth standpoint, more than anything to me. Like, they're similar guys in some ways, so our preparation for them is I would say is fairly similar. I don't see it as they have one package with these guys and another package with those guys for the most part, but it is, I'm sure Todd will tell you, it's really nice to have that kind of depth, that high quality, that quality of depth. It's important as we get into these games. The seasons are long, guys get banged up, stuff happens, so that's important for, you know, for most teams. But certainly when you have it as your interior guys, that's not as common to have that many guys with that size that play hard and are good players and know how to play. They're probably on a short list of schools that have that many guys.
Question if there is one.
Just go ahead.
Yeah, Florida in the second half started off really strong from three, and was it a lot of that, and getting a lot of good looks, was a lot of that just some miscommunication defensively, or was that just kind of some transition things?
Yeah, it was both. It was both. I'll have to watch the tape, but, you know, I always know when something's gone sideways. When we score, I look down, or we do something, and I look down at the bench to say something to one of my assistants or quickly to one of the players, and 2 seconds later I'm hearing a crowd cheering that they're making a shot. So some of them were just transition based on what we do. We got a shot blocked, and they come down, and they get transition stuff. We miss a shot, it squirts out. Two guys battle for the rebound, and it ends up in transition. That happened in conjunction with some other times where we had some miscues as to why is no one guarding that guy right there. We should have that figured out. So I think it was a combination of both of those things, and they took full advantage. I mean, you could get those same shots and not make as many. I mean, a couple of those shots that they made early, they're players. I mean, I don't want to take anything away from Walter Clayton at all, but those are difficult shots. A couple of those ones, like very crafty, next level from here plays that he made.
I mean, you held them to just 4 offensive rebounds, but I think they were able to get all their second chance opportunities to go. Just, is that something that you've noticed has consistently been, you know, something you want this team to continue working on, or was this kind of a little bit of an outlier tonight that they were able to?
That they were so proficient on those second chance opportunities.
Ones, but then they were.
Yeah. I mean, I think if you look at the percentages, I think they were. You could say the same thing about their transition situations. You could say the same thing about their three-point situations. You could say that about a lot of the things that they did. They played well. I mean, they played well. Certainly, we made mistakes. I'm not going to say we didn't make mistakes, but they played well. There's no denying that. I think anyone that's in their program would say they played really well today. And so, in this league, when you play a team, these teams are so good. If someone plays really well, you're probably not going to come out on top on that day. Probably. Do you have some say-so in how well they play? Oftentimes, yes. Sometimes, not quite as much, right? Texas A&M for us, Wade Taylor goes 7 for 10 after he had been only shooting 30% or less coming back from the injury. 7 from 10 on Steph Curry bombs. I mean, if guys do that, I mean, sometimes it makes it hard if a guy does that. So, thanks.